But soft, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Oh, hello! You found me doing what I often do on a lazy Sunday afternoon, reading through all the works of Shakespeare. But I think I'll take a break from that now to talk about something even more exciting, the economy. Well, chapter 6 is all about competition, and competition is a contest. It shows who is the best at any given thing. When we talk about the economy, well, in a free market, there's tons of competition. There's competition between the producers and the consumers as they decide how much of what product the buyers want and at what price they can sell as they haggle back and forth with the prices. There's also competition between different consumers. There's only so much to go around, and so different consumers have to compete with one another to decide who gets what. As we've seen with flour and toilet paper recently, there's not always enough to go around. And then also there's competition between producers and other producers as they're looking for people to buy their product. Competition helps everyone. It even helps the losers. America is a highly competitive market, and in America, even the losers of any competition are doing better off than the winners of a worse economy. Everyone in America is better off today than we were 100 years ago, even the losers. And that's when we look at comparative versus absolute wealth. When you compare yourself to the people around you, you might say, well, I don't have that much. Well, now compare yourself to people in Haiti, one of the poorest nations in the world, and it's just a few hundred miles off the coast of Florida. Yeah, if you visit Haiti, you'll realize that I may be poor in America. I'm actually rich overall. Let me read you some quotes. There's one here by Winston Churchill. He says, "The inherent vice of capitalism is the unequal sharing of blessings. The inherent virtue of socialism is the equal sharing of miseries." And would you rather be a loser in America or a winner in communist Russia? I think the answer to that is pretty obvious. 800 BC, a man named Hesiod was a poet in Greece, and he writes, "The needy idler sees the rich, and hastes himself to guide the plough and plant the wastes, ordering his household. Thus the neighbor speeds to wealth, and the neighbor emulous succeeds. That strife is good for men. Incensed to zeal, potter with potter turns the glowing wheel, smiths beat their anvils, beggars envious throng, and bards provoke the jealousy of song." He's saying when you're a winner, okay, you won, you have a lot of stuff. But when you're a loser, you look at the winners and say, I want to work hard so I can be a winner like them. And so the lazy, needy idler hastes himself to guide the plow. I don't have as much as my neighbor, so I'm going to compete with him and make myself better off. That strife, he says, is good for men. And lastly, Samuel Johnson, the "what did I just read" meme guy, he writes, "A man is seldom more innocently occupied than when he is engaged making money." If you don't believe that, have you ever been told that idle hands are the devil's plaything? When people are lazy, up to nothing, they're often up to no good. It's when people are working hard that they're often doing things that are productive and helpful to everyone around them, including themselves. There are four different types of competition mentioned in your book. The first one is perfect or pure competition. That's what we mostly have in America, really, really good, strong marketplace. In a good competitive market, there's lots and lots of sellers of any given object. There's many buyers who want that. So the market is really, really big. When a market is that big, any individual has very little influence on the market. You personally buying Coke over Pepsi is not going to influence anyone's bottom lines. And that's good for everyone. You don't want a product that appeals to one person, you want a product that appeals to millions of people. So real competition can only happen in a fairly large market comparatively. In a pure competitive market, you'll have very similar products. So Coke and Pepsi, very similar products, easily substituted. So if you don't feel like buying one, you can buy the other one instead. If there's a slight difference in quality, you can choose the one you like best. In a perfect marketplace, you also need to have free access to the market, meaning it's really easy to gain entry. And we're not really thinking buyers here as much as sellers. How easy is it for a new soda business to make its own soda? Well, maybe not terribly easy, but there are more and more mom and pop soda shops. There was one in Vermont that sold homemade root beer and cola, and it was really good. So that's interesting. There's nothing stopping you from making your own brand of soda. There also needs to be lots of information available to everyone so that you know what your competitors are doing. And in America, there is some information that is classified in the company, proprietary information that you don't have to share with anyone. But much of every company's information, its sales rates, the amount of money you make a year, the amount of debt you went into, that all is public information and is published every quarter. So anyone can go and look at it, and you can see how well your competitor is doing at a certain price point that they're selling at. Uh, this is the type of economy that America typically has. Three more though. Next one is monopolies. I'm sure you know all about monopolies. We've talked about them before. A monopoly happens when there's pretty much one seller of any good or service. There's no really good substitute. There might be a substitute, but no good substitute. Here's one for you. I have been looking for flour for like 3 weeks. Can't find any flour. I bought some cornmeal. It's a substitute. It's not a good substitute, though. It really doesn't make the same kind of bread, but oh well. Um, Entry into the marketplace in a monopoly is completely blocked. It is almost impossible, if not straight up illegal, for you to enter into this marketplace. They prevent that. Now, sometimes monopolies can be a good thing, and sometimes the government allows you to have a monopoly. Think a copyright, a patent, or a trademark. The government gives you permission to have a monopoly over a certain thing, at least for a certain period of time. And this is designed to help production. Would you write a book if you knew that someone else could just publish the exact same book and make the same amount of money off of it? No, of course not. If you write a book, you want to make money off of it. So if there was no patent on books, for instance, there would be fewer authors. So the government wants to encourage authors, and so they allow this patent. This can sometimes get out of hand, though. Uh, One thing that's often brought up is the medical industry, that they spend millions of dollars inventing new medicines and testing new medicines, and then they have a patent over it. But then sometimes they jack up the prices way too high and no one can afford the medicine, and it's just bad for everyone. But on the other hand, you do want to encourage these companies to continue making those medicines. And how do you encourage them? It's all in the money. Natural monopolies happen when just one seller is just too good at selling something that no one else can really compete with them. Think of Walmart is getting there. They are so good at what they do that when someone else tries to compete, they just can't compete. Walmart is too big to compete against very well. And they do have some competitors. They have, Target and Costco compete with them to some extent. Sometimes the natural monopoly happens when there's a very niche market. There's not very many of these items that many people want, and so one company has complete market saturation. No one else needs to make any more. There's just not enough consumers to go around. There's two different styles of monopolies too, vertical and horizontal. Vertical monopolies happen when one company owns every step of the entire process from start to finish. One early example of this would be Carnegie Steel Company. He started off with almost nothing and then started growing his business more and more and more. And he decided to keep expanding in the same business as he was going. And he went vertically. So he bought everything from the coal mines and the iron mines all the way to the steel factories. And then from the steel factories to the manufacturers who are turning the blocks of steel into something useful, like railroads, and engines and all sorts of different things. And he was just buying every step of the way. He bought all the railroad companies that transported the goods back and forth to his different companies. And so you could track, a shovel full of iron ore all the way up to the finished product, and made a lot of money that way. There were no middlemen. And so this product that would normally have 6 or 7 middlemen now has no middlemen, and all the profit is going to Carnegie himself. The next kind is horizontal. That's when you own everything of just one step, all of that one step in the country. So Rockefeller was a great example of this. His Standard Oil, he owned 97% of the oil refining capability in America. So if you wanted to get just natural petroleum from the ground and turn it into gasoline and kerosene and jet fuel and whatever, you had to buy his products, his services. You have to ship your crude to him, and then he refines it. And so he could charge whatever he wants. That is probably the type of monopoly that you are most familiar with, the horizontal monopoly, where one company owns everything in this one industry and you have to buy or sell from them. The next type of monopoly is a monopolistic competition, and it's a kind of a weird mix between monopoly and free market. This occurs when there's lots of different companies, but they're not quite selling the same product. Each product is different enough from each other that they're not directly competing, and it's very easy for new businesses to come into the market and make their own style. The example in your book was shampoo. You go down the shampoo aisle, there are dozens of different brands there, but they all have very different products. You have some with avocado oil in them. Right? You have some that have shampoo and conditioner. Some claim to be salon style. Some are for this type of hair or that type of hair. Some is for dyed hair, and some is for all natural. It's just so many different types of shampoo that they're not quite directly competing with one another. They found their own niche. I think a good example of this would be smartphones, especially back in the day when they were very different from one another. You have just the regular flat phone, and then you have the flip phone, and then you have the type where you put a horizontal and the keyboard comes out. Very, very different styles. Even not too long ago, Siri was the only type of thing that answered voice control. So Apple had a very different product from everyone else, and now different competitors also have that, so they're a little bit closer together now. But all these different smartphone companies do have different products, and they can look and feel very different from one another. So it's kind of monopoly, but it's also, there is some competition there. But there's not as much competition because you have very loyal followers. So there are some people who only buy Apple products because they claim so much better, they just like it better. So part monopoly, part competition. And the last one is called an oligopoly, where you have a handful of sellers. The products may be similar or may be very different. There are significant entry barriers, so it is very, very difficult to come into this market. That's why there are only a very few. A good example of this is the car industry. How much would it cost for you to build a new car factory from scratch? How many billions of dollars would you have to get in investments to make your own? Now imagine how many car factories you have to build to compete with Ford. You might have to get hundreds of billions of dollars of loans to make several different car factories, employ thousands of people before you even find a cent of profit. So no one's stopping you from starting your own car company. But how many car companies have been started in the last 50 years or 60 years? I think Tesla is probably the only one, and they're a very niche market with the electric cars. There's been no new car company in quite some time. I mean, Ford is over 100 years old. Ford was going strong before World War II. It's an old company, and there's only a handful of companies. So the government's not stopping you, they're not stopping you, but just the money, the entrance to get into that market is so difficult, there's not a lot. Monopolies are really not good for business. They can charge exorbitant prices, and even oligopolies can do the same thing if the heads of the different companies agree to raise prices altogether. This is called collusion. See, in an oligopoly, say Ford double its prices. It does have some loyal customers, but a lot of people would flee from Ford if they doubled their prices and everyone else did not. But if every car in America doubled its prices, well, then they wouldn't take so much of a hit. Very illegal, something that the government has stopped today. A good thing about America is that monopolies and oligopolies typically don't last very long because of market disruptors. A market disruptor is something that doesn't come and compete like a normal buyer or seller would. It just completely changes the market. A great example of this is the taxis. Taxis in New York City have a monopoly. You have to buy a medallion from New York City. So there's one taxi company. New York City owns all the rights to the taxis in New York City. So you can't start your own competitor until someone decided to come up with the idea of Uber, where you just have normal people with their own cars ferrying people back and forth on the weekends for a little extra money. Completely changed the market, did compete, and made the market completely different. Very interesting. There's been quite a few market disruptors in America. Think of Amazon and the rise of online selling, put bookstores out of business. When I was your age, I used to call up the J.C. Penney store and order from a catalog, and I would buy things by telling them the product number I saw in the catalog and the colors and quantities that I wanted. And I tell them my credit card number over the phone. That's how I bought stuff when I was a teenager. And today you could just go online for that. Completely change the market. I wonder what the next big market disruptor will be. So as bad as monopolies are, they don't last long in America. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video. Just some takeaways from it that I hope you can think about are: why is competition good? Why is lack of competition bad? If there is little competition, what should the government do about it? What can the government do about it? And are there any times when the government should allow a monopoly or should encourage a monopoly, or the other way around? How much should the government get involved? Does it do more harm or does it do more good? Try to apply these thoughts about competition to what's happening in the economy right now and what the government is doing for the economy right now. Research it. Have a great week.